So there's a lot to like here in Smart Sparrow. And there's a lot that's like other platforms. Certainly creating slides with quizzes and scoring is not unlike what you can do in Adobe Captivate. The insertion of rich media, audio, video, and the like is very much like Captivate. Also, I guess like Storyline, though I haven't spent as much time using that. What's different here is the adaptability features, or the ability to set up different pathways for the students to move through the materials. And unlike something like setting those up in a PowerPoint or setting them up in Connect, you don't set up these features based on what button a student pushes, but based on whether or not the students have reached a particular score, or whether or not they've had trouble on a particular type of question. So I've created some quiz questions here, and the students will enter the information, and I'll just show you how that looks. So here I can preview, and I get the question, and so the student needs to notate a B on the staff. They pick up a B, they notate it, and they would put the 7 in the blank here. I'm going to put a wrong answer. Now if I put a wrong answer, it says it's incorrect. So that's one state that this can have. It will check my answer, and if I give an incorrect answer, it will say, well, that's incorrect. And I'm going to give the same answer. That's also incorrect. Now if I give it one more time, what it will do, because I've set it to for just allow me to 2 incorrect answers, it will decide that I need more review. So it will push me back to the slide that covers the particular topic. In this case, this is identifying white notes on the keyboard and on the staff. So it pushed me to the slide that was particular to the type of learning that I was having trouble with. Similarly, here I have one with C#. And if we just look at some of these states down here at the bottom, here I can put that if the text entry, what goes in the little box, is, for instance, the code for this C# would be 1A. If it is that, then go to the next slide. So it'll go to the next question, and it will give me a point for that. So I get a point, it goes on. However, if I do not respond, it will say, please provide an answer. But more interestingly, if on this screen, this particular slide, my number of attempts is greater than 2, it will do the following. It will push me back to the page where I review information about sharps and flats. So it'll push me to the sharps review page, and it'll change my score on this question to 0. So it'll essentially make sure that I am not given any points for this, because you can get partial credit if your second attempt goes through. And then this is just the default stage, which essentially says this is an incorrect. So anything that is green is default for correct. So this is the default correct state. And all of these red ones are called traps. These are called trap states. So I've essentially set up a trap. And the first trap is if the text length is 0, so if they've tapped nothing in the blank, provide an answer. If they go over the number of attempts, send them to the page that is specifically targeted to the type of remediation, the type of studying they need to do. And the last trap state is, okay, if it's incorrect, say it's incorrect. So these are the 3 things that will happen if they are going, if once a student enters this slide and attempts this slide. Now, it's not that easy, it's not that intuitive, and frankly, the documentation is really, really lousy. But if you see here, I have to first click trap state scoring. So that means it knows that I have some traps beyond just the normal correct and default down at the bottom, correct state and default state. I need a screen button that'll give them essentially go on to the next, and you need that next button or they have nothing to click in to kind of activate these trap states. And the last is combined feedback, which says that normally it will just do the top state. So the more of these you have, it will still just stick to the top. This says consider them all at the same time. So I had to kind of figure out what these different checkboxes mean and which would work and which wouldn't work. And that was not entirely easy. And just, this is all Flash-based, this editor. So, you're not going to be able to do it on your phone, but also it has a lot of the elements of action scripting in. So it's the way it steps through processes. It's kind of interesting, but it also works that way. So I wanted to show you a couple other things. First, you can set up question banks, which are great, and I would just enter a question bank. And then, for instance, I could just start dragging all of my question slides into there, and then I could, on my question bank, set how many questions I want from that question bank. So that's interesting. The only issue with question banks, again, is it has to do with the fact that it's and I think I changed the order here. I think it has to do with the fact that it's action scripting. So when you put questions in a question bank, if you've set up all of these interesting states that you want it to consider, all of these get wiped out. So the only state that it will consider with a question bank is essentially this last thing, this one action. So after they've done all the questions in the question bank, go on. So if you have kind of adapted approaches to individual questions, individual slides, you can't put them inside a question bank, or all the interesting things you want them to do will disappear. So you want to use a question bank when you have a very focused section where you want to get them through that one section. But if there's possible alternatives of where they go, you don't want to use a question bank. And that's well, I'll just cut this a little bit out because it's not so interesting. All right, and then I also wanted to show you simulations, and I think this is kind of the core. Besides the fact that you can just add images, add sounds, and of course you link to the URL for the sound, you can actually add in, and I'll show you one that I did. Well, let's look at this a little bit. This is what is called in Smart Sparrow parlance a simulation, and you can either add a legacy simulation, and you see the little flash icon up there. So in other words, you can add a Swift file. So this is just a Swift file that I grabbed and I opened up inside. So here I have two of them now. So this is nice. So it retains all the action scripting that you've attached to it. And this is a new sim. And you see preview inside the iframe. In other words, you have to actually provide it with a web link for this new sim. And I don't have any of these. And what they're looking for here is HTML5 files made with something like Adobe Flex Animate or something like that. So that's interesting. So that's just you're adding a Flash file. The other is the new sim, and you see they give you an iframe here, and that's because they expect you to put the URL in for a HTML5 simulation that you want to run. Generally, these would be something like Adobe Flex Animate. I think that's the current type of software that runs, that you can create those sorts of elements in. Ultimately, what they'd like you to do is to contact them and talk with them about creating custom simulations, like the one I've made for my class, but they essentially they don't really tell you what to do with this or how to do anything with it or how to make it. They don't help you make any of these. Well, they don't provide you with any of these, but they'll be happy to take your money to make them for you. I'm almost tempted just to do this bit again. So you can see there's a legacy sim, and you can see the little flash symbol there. So in this instance, you would just grab a Swift file and you'd dump it onto your slide, and it would be there. And when you previewed, you could see both of the flash elements here, and they both still work. Let's go back, get rid of this one. The other is these new sims, and these new sims refer to HTML5 simulations that you would make in another sort of program. What is it? Like Adobe Flex, I think it's called now, or not Flex. Now I need to look it up. Oh, Adobe Edge. That's what I'm trying to think of. A file that you'd make in Adobe Edge Animate or something along those lines. Now, they don't provide you with any pre-built simulations, any pre-built Flash items, or any pre-built Adobe Edge files or anything like that. So you'd have to provide them on your own or make them on your own. Or if you want to, you can contact them and pay them to make them for you. And I suspect that this is where a lot of their business model is focused, is on getting you to make an investment with them to create really slick presentations. So here is my presentation that I ended up making. And you can see I can have a nice combination of things. I can have just images. I can have images and audio, and I can make pianos that actually play. So that is just a Flash element, and you can insert animations if you have them. And you can insert simulations with an action script backing. Now, any element you insert in Flash is only going to work on a desktop. So any student who opened this on their phone would see a blank spot, and really no indication of why there's a blank spot. Okay, thanks.